A new bill could require veterinarians to report suspected animal cruelty. The bill would require vets, vet techs, and clinic staff to report suspected animal abuse or neglect to police, animal control, or other official investigators. If they report in good faith, they are protected from being sued, disciplined, or fired. Changing or destroying medical records to hide abuse would be a crime. If the bill does become a law, it will go into effect on July 1st of next year. And today,